Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you to further innovations from inPuncto. inPuncto as the product house for add-on development for SAP. We have repeatedly received requests from our customers to be able to process Excel as directly as possible within SAP. And now we have created the possibility, a truly exciting solution with direct posting of this Excel file and transactions based on the content of the Excel and how we can realize this. Take a look at this. It really is a very exciting story. Let's first take a comprehensive look at the basic agenda that we have carefully planned for the next few crucial minutes. There is, of course, the general requirement to bring Excel into SAP. I would like to briefly introduce the overall system diagram, then meticulously outline the significant advantages, and of course utilize 3 comprehensive examples to clearly and thoroughly demonstrate to you what is now truly possible within SAP with this innovative technology. First of all, Excel still plays a very important role in companies. We won't go into that in more detail here, but there is always the recurring requirement to bring Excel into SAP. There are requests where we need to forward something directly, for example, as a reminder, or where it is requested that the Excel file be sent to SAP via share or by email, for instance. And then something is supposed to happen there. And we have now solved this. That means depending on the significance of the Excel file, for example, is it a posting document, is it a purchase requisition, or is it employee master data or vendor data, or does the correct SAP transaction need to be triggered accordingly? The transfer of these Excel values, that is, the values contained in the Excel file, must of course then be carried out automatically in the respective transaction. We have also implemented this accordingly. The posting of the object is carried out, and an archive link connection between the posted SAP object and the Excel file is completed. The entire topic, especially when we also consider the archiving of this Excel file. For example, when it comes to archiving, we are really comprehensively set up at this point. So what does it look like from the system's perspective? From a schematic point of view, we have an Excel file externally, meaning on any number of computers, with various templates or files that, of course, need to be equipped with some technical features so that everything works. So here is just an example. This Excel file is sent to the scan server. There are 2 possibilities. There's a feeder via share, meaning we place it in a folder on the scan server, or it is transferred by email. Then internally the scan server processes it. And in such a way that we manage to do it simply, these Excel values can then actually be read out in a structured way using a mechanism in the scan server so that these values can ultimately be transferred to SAP. And of course also trigger the correct transaction there accordingly. And thus the SAP object can be posted. And automatically, of course, the archive link connection with the Excel file is also carried out towards the archive accordingly. And with that, we are then actually completely and thoroughly clean at this particular point in time. The advantages, of course, with this whole topic. We have a tool that is established in the company. It is a familiar tool for the users. Of course, we can also, outside of SAP, for example, in a reconciliation process, release, lock, or otherwise manage this Excel file. Then we can create Excel files for very specific or SAP transactions. That means there are truly unlimited application scenarios for this fundamental technology. Of course, we then no longer have to retype anything, not from any content copied from Excel, but instead we avoid these transmission errors because the data is taken directly from Excel and transferred to SAP. Of course, this transfer only happens through SAP authorized users. That's absolutely clear. And here in SAP, of course, any number of scenarios are imaginable. For example, we can post directly to a transaction, say transaction XY, or that we start an ad hoc workflow, for example. Of course, it's then up to you how you ultimately want to handle this data. Archiving the Excel file with archive link, linking it to this sub-object, rounds off the whole topic and gives you a perspective. When we look at archiving Excel files, of course, in the medium term, we would also like to convert this Excel file into a neutral PDF. That's a topic we already have in mind. And if we now think about a circulation process like this, it is quite possible that in addition to this Excel file, there are also other attachments of certain importance, which should later, for example, during posting, be archived as additional documents attached to the object. So these are also further topics to consider. But now let's take a look at all of this using three different examples: a general ledger document, a purchase requisition, and a vendor master sheet. I'll take an example now to show you a digital booking document. So here I have an Excel file, which has naturally been enhanced a bit with technology so that we can later process this Excel file directly in SAP. So for example, here are various booking documents. We can also see that with this mechanism, we can use multiple tabs for different booking documents, just as you're used to working in Excel. We can also modify the data here accordingly. Up here are also fixed data, which will later be included in the posting and are read out by our scan server. So this is completely normal behavior. I'll just add something here again so you can see it live. So for example, the document date would now be the 16th. This is to be posted. On the 17th, just as an example, here we have 3,000. And here there's also a special feature. For example, we can take into account topics like different general ledgers, such as ledger groups. And we'll take a look at that in a moment. So that's how it should look in the end. As I said, completely normal behavior. Here as well, posting date 16, here posting date 16, posting date 17. This would be interesting for research in a moment, especially when we want to bring it in accordingly into the SAP system. How do we want to do that? That's very easy by selecting a directory here. This is one solution. For example, we now want to store this data directly via the share function. That's one possibility. The second viable option, of course, is that we securely send it to a designated email address. And from that specific email address, all these subsequent and necessary steps are then meticulously carried out in the background. So now, basically polled, the scan server polled now to this directory. We can see that right here. I think the job is set to about 20 seconds. I'll just try to refresh it so you can see it again. Now it's processed. Wonderful. Let's switch over to SAP and take a look at the whole thing. So typically it would be here at FP0, at FP03. And then we can filter a bit more precisely using the document list. For example, the specific posting date would be clearly indicated there. And will we still be able to accurately catch the essential topic or main subject from that single particular document, even with this information? 16 to 17. That was, for example, the 1000. And now I'll just remove this here. And now I get various documents here that we can look at. So for example, this document number 15, posted on January 17th. So posting date January 17th. That was the one I just modified again, now with the salaries and the total calculation. And what else? Also interesting is that for this directly posted item, we of course also have an asset list. This here is, for example, the Excel file we just created earlier, now shown in full. Now I'm also going to the second document. Those were indeed the substantial 3,000 euros, which are meticulously structured and organized accordingly in a very precise manner. Here too, the document date was the 16th. The posting date was the 17th. All right, great. Let's move on to the last document. That was this one here. Posting date 16th. That was once again this issue with two different items referring to the same account assignment information. And now one is still missing, namely, this is again this ledger group, this number 6. And I'm just trying to identify that here again. Now let's look for the L6 again, and here we have this one. This is the newest one. I had already done a test run before. This one here, for example, is also properly assigned via ledger group 6. So this is a clear example of precisely how we can effectively read Excel data directly from the dedicated scan server and then seamlessly bring it into the absolutely correct transaction for subsequent posting. The next example of direct processing of Excel files towards SAP is now the example of a purchase requisition. Here, an Excel file is used to generate and coordinate a purchase requisition. Let's do this as an example so that we can also change it in real time. For example, let's use specific values like 10, 20, and then 30, such as these, in terms of the overall quantity. For the specific delivery date, let's just go ahead and set it to January the 14th, 2020. And then this particular process should just continue on like that for the 15th and then the 16th. And of course, in Excel, you also have the standard options to preset values accordingly, but that should be enough for now. So planned Hamburg, Atlanta, Dresden, that should work like this. This will now also be saved in the same way as before. Now, of course, in an inbox intended for purchase requisitions, or of course, an email that is sent to the scan server. The scan server polls this directory. In the other case, the email is processed directly. Here, the polling mechanism is set to about 20 seconds. That means after 20 seconds, we can expect, for example, that it has been picked up. Let's just test it right now. Now, any moment it will be done. So now it's processed, and we move over to the SAP system and there to the correct transaction here in ME51N. Do we retrieve the data there according to the purchase requisitions? Accordingly, the data, today the request date is just an example, the 16th. And then following this will truly be the very last final BANF event. So let's take a look at that. Here were the 10, I'm just going through them, the 20 and the 30 with their respective delivery dates, 14, 15, and 16. The first one, this is just one example of how we can directly trigger a BANF event from this Excel file in the context of BANF. Captain, the direct processing of Excel files is now demonstrated here using the example of a creditor master data record. So we'll go ahead and make some changes accordingly and meticulously adjust the entire configuration. Here, we are specifically referring to this particular designated test path, and we're here in 123 within the much larger and more intricate system of 12,345. Test instead of as an example. All right, that should be enough for us. This will then be completed accordingly and of course saved again. And here again, the absolutely correct and appropriate directory is used, for example, for the storage of various important files and documents, ensuring everything is perfectly organized. For the suppliers, for the vendor master data is selected accordingly. That means, so in the different shares, we actually have various processing options depending on the context. For example, here the scan server also points to this directory and processes it. As mentioned, another option is to send an email to a dedicated email address of the scan server. And then we check whether the processing has taken place. Great, then let's go over and we'll check everything with the XK03. And now, of course, we will just proceed to search for the individual named Smith right here within our system. And this has now been created, John Smith 123 test gone. And accordingly, we can clearly see the comprehensive data. Well, the specific company code itself wasn't initially created, but these are, for example, the essential and complete data sets that we were successfully able to transfer directly and seamlessly from Excel into the sophisticated SAP world, a powerful enterprise resource planning system. Yes, a truly impressive mechanism. What we've done here with the endpoint is to prepare the Excel file in such a way that SAP's internal structures can be read and interpreted. That's a significant added value. There are many possible applications you can consider for this. We've shown you 3 examples. So I think you get a sense of which areas of application you can address with this. Discuss it internally and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. We are happy to conduct additional web sessions for you and your team. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much for your attention.